Hey guys, just a reminder that I'm running an art contest until August 31st at midnight Eastern Standard Time. The details will be in the video that I will link below. If you haven't watched that, go ahead and do that. And I also want to let you know that I made more merch, which will be linked below as well. I would like to thank Martin for sharing this with me. He sent it a while ago and it sort of got buried in the frenzy of me trying to gather content. Enjoy. My dad was born toward the end of World War II and grew up deep in the hills. When I was a kid, he told me the story of a wake he went to for an old lady who lived down the road. When this lady died, her friends and family gathered in her house to mourn, celebrate her life, and divide up her belongings. In the South, when someone dies, the entire community comes to their home with tons of food to try to comfort the family while they go about making arrangements. My dad was in elementary school at the time, and he was there in the living room of this house. All of the neighbors were arranging food trays and congregating in the lower floor, while some of the family were upstairs in the bedroom going through the lady's belongings. My dad said he heard one loud thump, then a rhythmic clatter coming from upstairs, and the family came bolting down the stairs, absolutely terrified. When asked, they all said that the bed was dancing. When I was a kid, we were in that same neighborhood visiting my grandparents, and my dad told us the story. I asked if the house was still there, and he said it was and he would show me on the way home. We left my grandparents' house, made a left turn about halfway down, over a creek, up a steep winding hill into the woods, and at the top of the hill was a newer house where the same family now lived. And there was the old farmhouse, vacant and looking like it would fall down any minute. I got a good look, and as we turned around and headed back down toward the highway, as we left the hilltop, I could swear I saw a lantern light suddenly flash out of the top story window as we left. My uncle lives at the end of the same road, but even deeper into the same woods, even higher in the same hills. He is a bluegrass musician, and he married a singer. Pretty talented side of the family. My uncle and his now ex-wife could play just about any instrument either of them were handed. She told their daughter, who told me later, about a flute, I assume a wooden recorder, she picked up at a flea market once. I was pretty young and don't remember all of the details, but my cousin was always creeped out by the flute when she was a kid. One day, when no one else was in the house, my aunt heard flute music coming from her home studio. She said she opened the door to see how this could have been happening, and the flute was floating in the air, playing itself. She said she burned it after that. I never really believed this story and never saw any proof of it, but nonetheless, I found it very unsettling. One of my most vivid childhood memories was with this same cousin when I was 8 years old. She introduced me to the legend of Bloody Mary. She, myself, my brother, and 2 other cousins, all of us within 3 years of the same age, were at my grandparents' house again. This was a house my grandfather had built himself shortly before my father was born, and by the time I was around, it was old and creaky and pretty spooky in its own right. It had a front living room and kitchen, then a long hallway leading to the rear sitting room, which was much larger, but used only for special occasions. The hallway was dark and secluded, so as kids, we would go there and get away from our parents and tell ghost stories. usually stupid ones we either made up as we went or stuff we read in scary stories to tell in the dark, etc. And occasionally, our younger cousins would get a little creeped out by these, but they were usually just good fun. This particular day, we were getting a little bored with this level of creepy, and I challenged my cousin to tell us the scariest ghost story she knew. She just said, Bloody Mary. And two of my younger cousins who had heard this before stood up and left. Now I was really intrigued. After a decent amount of begging, I finally heard her version of the legend. A woman named Mary who lived nearby was in an accident and had her face severely mauled and bled to death. This woman was known to be vain in life and took great pride in her long fingernails. If you stand in a dark room in front of a mirror, turn around 18 times and say Bloody Mary 13 times, fully believing it would work, she would appear in the mirror. If you taunt her, or are otherwise cruel or threatening, she would come out of the mirror and carve up your face with her nails. It took a lot of convincing, but I managed to talk her and the rest of my cousins into doing the ritual. There were 5 or 6 of us, and we decided it would work best if the girls did all the spinning and chanting, while the guys watched the door to make sure no adults tried to stop us. Off of the hallway, where we told these stories, was a very large bathroom with enough floor space for all of us. A big mirror in front of the sink, and a window which had been blocked off from the outside. The bathroom was nearly pitch black during the day with the lights off. The large number of repetitions involved in the spinning and chanting built up tons of suspense. I was skeptical, but curious, having been presented with a way to prove once and for all whether ghosts existed or not. I was looking at the floor as they finished the 13th Bloody Mary, and everyone was silent for a moment. I looked up at the mirror as I was saying, "See guys, it doesn't." And then I swear to you behind us, in the reflection of the closed bathroom door, was the image of a woman. About 40 years old, with long black hair, her face covered in deep scars, deep black eyes, down to the small glimmering point where a crack in the board blocking the window allowed a little light to shine through, appearing for a brief moment, as sharp and clear as reality. We all ran out. We ran out of the bathroom, through the hall, through the kitchen, through the living room, past our parents, out the front door, down the porch steps, down the yard, across the road, finally stopping at the creek. One of my cousins told me about a well down the road that he thought was haunted. Apparently, he heard 2 guys fighting over whose property this well was on, and one shot the other and dumped the body into the well, and as a result, it was haunted. We, of course, went to investigate. This well was about halfway to the highway, on the corner of the road leading to the house in my first story. This was about a quarter of a mile from where we stood. In the middle of a meadow at the foot of a hill, with a creek separating it from the road, and another branches off of the creek on the other side, with nothing else but grass and a few trees in this meadow. The meadow felt eerie. It was quiet and empty and pretty far from any houses. I guess I could see how it would be hard to determine whose property it was on. But nothing weird happened, and we didn't see a body or any ghosts, so after a while we got bored and decided to leave. But as we were riding off on our bikes, we saw some kind of white shape in the trees. It seemed to be following us until we passed the creek branch at the border of the meadow. My grandparents never owned a TV and didn't go to the movies. They had a radio they mostly just used for news and weather, and read the local newspaper, which was mostly local human interest stories. They were pretty cut off from Hollywood culture and all that. My family has kind of a weird tradition of getting each other offbeat, sometimes deliberately embarrassing or nonsensical Christmas gifts. For instance, one period, for about 4 years, my older brother and my uncle kept regifting each other this old pair of shoes, until my uncle got tired of it and gave my brother a jar of pickles with a staple remover taped to the lid. E.T. had just come out the year of the story, and somebody thought it would be funny to get my grandmother, an adamantly anti-movie type of person, an E.T. doll. When she opened it and got a good look at it, she started crying. She said, "It was that thing that crawled in bed with me that one night." I will say, Martin, you have a very interesting life and family, and I thank you for sharing this with everyone. I can only imagine the stories going around at reunions. Personally, I would love to witness it. What about you? Has anything happened to you that you would like to share? If so, email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time.